Yes. Trying to tighten up, be a little more professional.
Why? The other looked really kind of cool.
Oh, thank you. I'll bring it back. All right, folks, ready to roll? I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Ventura Local Agency Formation Commission, Wednesday, March 20th, 2019. And would Janice Parvin lead the Pledge of Allegiance?
Hand over heart, ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
All right, could we start the roll call, please?
Commissioner Freeman? Here. Commissioner Parvin?
Here.
Commissioner Ramirez?
Here.
Commissioner Rooney?
Here.
Commissioner Zaragoza?
Here.
Chair Ross?
Present.
Alternate Commissioner Curtis? Here?
Yes, sir, you.
Richards?
Here.
Very good.
Mr. Chair, just for information, I just want to share to the board that I got to leave at 11:15. I'm not sure if we're going to be here that long, but, just to share that.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 4, agenda review. Consider and approve by majority vote minor revisions to commission items and/or attachments in any item added to or removed, continued from the LAFCo agenda, and changes to the order of business to accommodate a special circumstance. Is there anything that we would like to move around here?
I mean, given the fact that Commissioner Zaragoza is going to leave, if there's any items that you'd like to move forward for consideration, I'd be willing to make that motion.
Yes,
I think we'll be able to
Hopefully.
make it.
but thank you, Maria.
You're welcome. I move approval of the agenda.
Okay.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Zaragoza. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Moving on to item 5, public comment. Do we have any public speaker cards? Okay. Moving on then to the consent calendar,
Move for approval.
I'll second.
moved by Commissioner Freeman and Parvin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, let's move to a public hearing item 8, LAFCO 19-01, Ventura County Service Area number 33, dissolution. Thank you,
Mr. Chair, can I just ask them quickly, and I just want to welcome Jack, Curtis, to the board here, and I've had the opportunity to serve with Jack in the past, and it's great to see him, here today. Can you hear me, Jack?
I didn't hear any of that.
Nice
good.
things about you.
I'm hard of hearing, I have hearing aids.
I just want to welcome you, and again, I've served with Jack in the past, and then he's a good addition to LAFCo.
Excellent.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Given the 2 comments now from our alternate commissioner here, I think that we need to look at some accommodations, either
That's right.
increasing the volume level or some headphones or something to accommodate so he hears every word that's spoken here.
Good point.
Just for the record, he was on LAFCO 2002 to 2008,
Yeah.
right? Has a bit of experience.
I was in the city council when I served with the Oshar City Council when I served with Jack. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you, John.
Have you? Are there speakers on these microphones here, or
Yeah. That turns it up. This turns it up.
that is a speaker?
Yeah.
Okay. There should be volume control right in front of you on the base of the speaker. All right.
With the white line.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, and welcome, Jack. It's good to have you. All right. Item.
Wait. I mean, he's not.
Oh, okay. Let's make sure. Testing. Can you hear now? All right. We're in business.
Okay.
What did you do?
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Rooney, for that. Appreciate the sensitivity there. Great. We're all here. Okay, now item 8. Let's see what we got here.
Good morning. This is the public hearing for the dissolution of Ventura County Service Area Number 33 that your commission initiated in January. First, a quick recap is that CSA 33 was formed in 1991 to provide for enhanced funding for parks and recreation facilities within unincorporated Ventura County. It provides no services, has no assets or liabilities, and since 1995 has received no revenues and incurred no expenses. In 2017, a new provision of LAFCo law was enacted requiring that LAFCOs dissolve inactive districts. This table summarizes the provisions of the new law, and the requirements include these 3 items. On or before November 1st, 2018, and every year thereafter, the state controller shall create a list of inactive special districts. The state controller released that list in October of 2018, and CSA 33 was included on that list. Next, the commission shall initiate dissolution of inactive districts, and your commission took that action back in January. And finally, the commission shall hold 1 public hearing on the dissolution of an inactive district, and that is today. The commission has no discretion and must dissolve an inactive district. Staff recommends that your commission adopt a resolution making determinations and approving the dissolution of CSA 33 pursuant to LAFCO law and finding that the action is exempt from CEQA. That concludes the presentation for this item.
Okay. Do we have anyone from the county speaking on this today, or
Not that I'm aware of,
no
no.
input? Okay. All right. Well, if that's the case, then I suppose we'd close the public hearing and then deliberate on the item.
I have a comment.
You have a comment?
I
Commissioner?
would just say the same thing that I said last time. And I think it's really unfortunate that the county formed this area for park and recreation purposes and then didn't take the necessary action to see that those services could be provided. So it, when you look at the breadth of the land covered and the number of people served, it makes me sad that we have to do this. Thank you.
Understandable. Anyone else? Okay, well, if there's no further questions, I suppose the recommendation is for approval. Do I have a motion
I'll
to
move staff's recommendation.
Commissioner Parvin and Commissioner Rooney? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay. Moving on to action items. Item number 9, policy regarding amendments to the Ventura LAFCo Commissioner's Handbook. Consider adoption of procedures for making amendments to the Ventura LAFCO Commissioner's Handbook. Staff?
I'm going to wait until the PowerPoint loads. At its January meeting, the commission directed staff to agendize commission consideration of policies regarding making amendments to the LAFCO Commissioner's Handbook. The suggested policy would require that proposed new or amended commission policies be considered at 2 public hearings. And I would like to note that there's a correction to the staff report statement that no other LAFCOs have established policies regarding the adoption of policy changes. Nevada LAFCO does have a policy that there be 2 readings prior to any adoption of policy changes, but the requirement for the 2nd reading may be waived by the commission. The existing process for policy amendments is that an item is placed on the commission's meeting agenda through either direction by the commission to the executive officer or initiation by the executive officer. The commission can then discuss potential policy changes, provide further direction to staff, continue the matter to another meeting, and/or adopt policy changes. There's no statute in LAFCO law that requires the commission to hold 2 hearings prior to the adoption or amendment of a policy, but the commission may adopt a policy to require more than 1 hearing and impose that on itself. The first part of divisions 2 through 5 of the LAFCO Commissioner's Handbook state that Ventura LAFCO policies are general guidelines for the commission to follow, but are not mandatory or binding. It's important to recognize that the Commission's policies are flexible and may be waived. Likewise, the absence of a specific policy does not prevent the Commission from continuing a handbook policy amendment discussion if it determines that more time or discussion is warranted. Staff recommends that the Commission direct staff as appropriate. And that concludes the presentation.
All right, thank you for that. Well, it seems like we could adopt a policy for second reading, and then in the event that we feel like that's unnecessary, we could waive that, or continue as is, and any item that does appear to be more controversial or take more time for consideration, we could have a second reading and continue it to the next meeting. Does any commissioner have thoughts on this? Commissioner Rooney?
Thank you. And thank you for bringing this back so quickly. I appreciate that. You know, the reason why I felt this was important is that sometimes things slip through on public agendas when you only have a few days to review it and run it by an organization that you might work with or have further impacts. In fact, on what brought this one up was I found out that there were many agencies that would be impacted by the decision that we were contemplating at that time. And that's why I asked for further review on this. You know, my feeling is that over the last year or so, we've been looking at this LAFCo board becoming a little bit more, have more clarity in the policies and the procedures that we use. And so I felt that having two readings on a policy change gave the public more opportunity to comment and gave the public more opportunity to see what the changes were that were going to be adopted. So in keeping with good public policy, which I know all of us want to do, it gave us a second choice, which we saw at the last meeting that there were now 4 or 5 different groups that came to speak to us on that very issue. Since that time, there's been more that I've found out about that are concerned about that one policy. So that's where if there was no rush to implement the policy, my feeling is let's take a step back and do the good analysis and research on it and see where the impacts are going to lie. And that having a second reading gives us, I think, that opportunity to do that. Thank you.
I would just say if it gives us more transparency, which is what we want, and we want the public to have every opportunity, I don't see a problem having it brought back under a second hearing.
Yes, Commissioner Ramirez.
Just for clarification, I think I agree with the comments of the two commissioners who just spoke. But question, if the board decided it didn't need a second reading, would we be able to just say, okay, we waive it in this case? Yep. But generally, the policy would be 2 readings. Is that what I'm hearing from
Exactly.
Mr. Walker, correct?
We don't have to, right?
It's up to your commission's pleasure. Generally, as Ms. Osdy pointed out, with respect to all of the policies set forth in the handbook, your commission has the ability to waive those policies if the circumstances warrant. So it would be consistent if your commission were to do the same thing with respect to a second reading requirement.
Thank you.
And if I might add, Nevada County LAFCo's policy specifically says that there'll be 2 readings unless the second reading is waived by the commission. And that waiver could happen at the first hearing, at the first reading, if the commission determines it's a non-controversial, straightforward item that doesn't necessarily need a second reading. It can waive that reading consistent with the policy and not waive the policy, which just reduces a step.
Right. Okay.
Sorry, I have a couple of questions. So in the presentation, you mentioned that the Commissioner Handbook were guidelines. They're really not policies. So my question is, if we are able to be flexible and waive some of the policies, does that require a 2/3 majority as well if we waive a quote policy that day?
I don't believe so, no.
What's the measurement?
No, it's just the vote of 4 of the commissioners to waive a policy that's in place in the Commissioner's Handbook. It's not a supermajority.
So you just need a majority to waive a policy, but you need a 2/3 to implement a new policy. Well, I hate to use the word policy because it's really not a policy.
No, I want to clarify for you, Commissioner, I believe what you have in mind is the section on bylaws, which I believe is only the first portion of the Commissioner's Handbook, which contains the bylaws. Those bylaws require the 2/3 vote. All of the policies that we've been talking about are not in that section, and therefore only require a simple majority, 4 votes of the commissioners.
So thank you for the clarification. So when we were looking at the out-of-areas service agreement, I think I get those words mixed up there, but when we were looking at it the last meeting, that required a 2/3. So I believe that was on the agenda.
No, because it's not contained in the bylaws. So that particular policy, if your commission were to adopt it, would require just 4 votes.
Several of the items that were on the last agenda were amendments to the bylaws. Those amendments required a supermajority. The remainder just required a majority.
Okay, I thought it was all under the 2/3. Okay. So just to wrap up here, so when we are looking at waiving a policy, that just is a simple majority? Okay.
That is correct.
And the policies state that to waive a policy, it has to be 4, but the commission also has to state the reason and then adopt that reason as part of the resolution or whatever the action is.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, being able to waive a policy on any given day with a simple majority seems arbitrary, and, during any one day that you can waive your policies. And so that just kind of rings a conflict for me for keeping us fair.
But I think the reason it is that way is to offer flexibility for various circumstances that could arise. And without that flexibility, I think LAFCo would have great difficulty.
So, Mr. Chair, so that would be for that meeting only, right? To waive a policy of a particular meeting? Or
Right, as part of whatever the commission's determination is on a proposal, as part of that approval, it can waive a policy as long as it outlines the reasons why, and then those are adopted as part of the record. Now, regarding exceptional circumstances, several of the commission's policies have that language built in, that unless exceptional circumstances exist, the commission shall do or not do this. That is a built-in flexibility with that individual policy. You're not waiving the policy by finding that there's exceptional circumstances. And I think there's often times where staff has identified exceptional circumstances to encourage the commission not to apply this policy. So.
Commissioner Parvin, do you have anything?
No, I did, but it was already asked.
Onset, okay. Okay, we got some clarity here on the rules. Would any commissioner like to make a motion on,
I'd like to move approval.
okay, for adopting a second
Just adopt a
reading
second.
as our general?
Consistent with the Nevada wording?
we're okay with it?
Yeah.
I would suggest that the motion be to bring the item back with the proposed language for your
Great
commission to
suggestion.
consider at the next meeting or future meeting.
Formalize it then.
Okay, I'm going to modify my motion to incorporate that. So to direct staff to come back with policy language, to have a second reading for any policy changes in the Commissioner Handbook.
An amendment, yeah.
Great.
I'll second that.
And a second from Commissioner Zaragoza. All right, let's go. Any further comment? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item 10, proposed adoption of legislative policies for 2019.
I just want to thank staff for bringing this forward.
Yes.
Kind of wanting this to happen. And so I appreciate it.
At its last meeting, the commission adopted policy 151, which states that the commission shall adopt legislative policies to guide its actions related to legislative matters. Following adoption of legislative policies, the commission shall, at a minimum, annually review the legislative policies of the California Association of LAFCOs, known as CAL-LAFCO, and its own legislative policies, and either revised or re-adopt its legislative policies. The CAL-LAFCO Board of Directors annually adopts legislative policies and most recently did so in December of 2018. The policies are categorized and include LAFCO purpose and authority, LAFCO organization, agriculture and open space protection, orderly growth, and service delivery and local agency effectiveness. I have a snapshot there of the policies that you can't read on the screen, but they're included as an exhibit to your staff report. Ventura LAFCO is generally supportive of these policies through its own local policies, application of LAFCO law, membership in CAL-LAFCO, and participation in the legislative committee. And therefore, staff recommends that the commission adopt the 2019 CAL-LAFCO policies as its own for the upcoming year by adopting the resolution establishing those as the legislative policies. And that concludes the presentation.
I will make that motion.
Motion, all right,
I
made.
have a question.
Yes?
Remember how we worked on that joint land use study regarding the naval base? Do we want to include something specific in our policy regarding the protection of the naval base?
The commission actually adopted policies already that do apply to the JLUs.
Okay.
Separate from this, yeah.
Yeah, it's not in here, so when I saw that, I'm like, do we need to put it in here or no?
Yeah, these are just legislative policies that, to help guide me when I write a letter, in support of some CAL-LAFCO position.
So you would still be writing the letter based on the other document that we came forth with?
If it, for the JLUs? Yes, for any project that would be subject to that policy.
Okay.
Yeah, we would be relying on that policy in the letter.
And the J-Luce, excuse me, Mr. Chair, started with the Navy,
Yeah,
Yeah, they're the ones saying, and all of us bought into it.
yeah.
Right, and
Good point.
yeah, and the commission was the first agency to adopt
That's right.
policies implementing the recommendations of the JLUs. So other cities and the county are working on it.
That's right.
So you made a motion, I'll make a second to your motion now.
All right, first and second made. For
have a question.
discussion, yes, Commissioner Rooney.
So I'd like to know, do we, on a local level, have a subcommittee or who is working on aligning the CAL-LAFCO legislative policies with our local board? Because, I mean, there may be some things that don't fit exactly with what we're interested in. So, I mean, to go through and just do a blanket approval of the CAL-LAFCO policies, I mean, have we as a commission looked at those and if there's anything we want to tweak or our local?
You're our representative, right?
Well, yeah, I sit on the CAL-LAFCO Ledge Committee. I'm an alternate this year for the coastal region. But yet we review these and then make a recommendation to the CAL-LAFCO board to adopt them. But that's at the CAL-LAFCO level. It doesn't reflect the commission here. The commission is going to have to adopt these annually as its legislative platform. So if there is any item in here that the commission does not want to adopt as part of its platform, at that time it can discuss the issue and remove it if it so desires.
Well, going back to my question though, but as a commission, I don't remember having a conversation about the legislative policies. And so if we have a representative who's going to the state level, I think it's prudent to have a conversation amongst our board before Mr. Loma goes and carries that message forward.
So, so you could add or subtract to the ledge is what you're saying?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, just to make sure that it
right.
fits with what we're adopting. Because, I mean, we're adopting carte blanche, this whole legislative
Currently.
policies without any discussion amongst our commission.
good point.
And so that's why if we agendize conversations before you go through this process, then that gives our voice to be heard.
And normally, Supervisor Parks, what we do in the Board of Supervisors, we have our ledge person, our governmental person, meet with the different board members, and then we agree, disagree, or add, subtract, and then we bring it to the board.
Yeah, so many different committees that I'm on have legislative platforms,
That's
right? SCAG has one, the Transportation Commission has one,
ACT.
and it just goes on, and this is the whole point, is once you adopt it, you understand our positions, and so he
That's
can
right.
take those forward without having to come back each time.
Right, and the LAFCo Association, I just want to explain that that is different from what the commission is doing today.
Yeah.
LAFCO's legislative policies apply to LAFCO. Your policies that you're adopting here, though they are the ones from LAFCO, they become the commission's legislative policies. So if there's something on those legislative policies that the commission doesn't agree with, we're having that discussion now. So you can remove any of these for your purposes of your commission. It doesn't affect the LAFCO. LAFCO has already adopted these, and they will always adopt them before you adopt them, because any changes in it, we will give you the opportunity to adopt those as well.
So this is the forum for us to be reviewing.
Right, but I don't feel like, I mean, we're bringing, this agenda item's being brought forward with no study session, no comments, no presentation, to just adopt these for ourselves. And so I take our policies very seriously, where this commission has never had that study session or visioning session about the policies.
And we can change that, Mr. Chair, we can talk to individual board members or in general, all of us, and discuss are they good for Ventura County and et cetera, et cetera. Is that what you're talking about, right?
I mean, I'm not comfortable voting on something that I've never even had a conversation about.
Yes, Commissioner Richards.
I might illustrate your comments. Down at the bottom on the last item on the list of council. Adequate municipal services for, thank you, for inhabited territory. It talks about expedite processing for inhabited annexations should be consistent with LAFCO law and fiscally viable. That's permissive. It seems like it should be, shall. Those are the kinds of language missteps that possibly are included in here. I just wanted to point that out, that, without some discussion, you may miss some of those nuances associated with some of these language in here. So.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, Commissioner Freeman.
Was this list developed by the legislative committee and approved by the board of LAFCO?
Annually, the legislative committee will review and suggest any changes to it. So, I mean, it's already existed, and any amendments to it or proposed amendments, the legislative committee will
This came
review.
to the legislative committee for LAFCO,
Yes,
and it went to their board,
right,
and they try to address things statewide.
right. And
They have to be fairly broad and flexible
right.
policies.
And these are legislative policies. These policies do not apply to a proposal that comes before the commission. These are the policies that the commission will evaluate, that basically I will evaluate if I believe that the commission needs to weigh in on a law, or LAFCO has asked for Ventura LAFCO's support in the annual omnibus bill. We get that request quite a bit. We haven't had legislative policies or policies that would allow me to send that letter on behalf of the commission in support. So these are just to evaluate whether state legislative actions.
But I think, Mr. Chair, the recommendation that Commissioner Rooney wants is that we look at them, and wordsmith or do whatever we want with and then approve and then go. That's what you're proposing, right?
I'm asking for some sort of process to be established that if our local commission is going to be adopting any policies, that we have a comment period and a conversation amongst our commission.
An opportunity.
And I don't feel that we're doing that in this case here. We're just being asked to adopt a set of policies that were developed outside of our local commission.
Commissioner Curtis?
Is it currently the policy of the commission that you review these every year, or are they asking you to review them every year?
We have not reviewed them in the past, and that's why it's here this time, because I wanted the legislative agenda for LAFCO to be brought to this commission, because we really haven't done that in the past. So my question is to staff, if there are any specific bills that affect any of these policies that the Cal-LAFCo Legislative Committee was reviewing, would they come to this commission for review and comment?
Not at the Cal-LAFCo level. Again, separate the Cal-LAFCO policy, the legislative policy, and the Ledge Committee that I sit on, take all that off the table. This legislative policy brought before you today are your commission's legislative policies. And they will guide any correspondence coming out of the LAFCO office regarding legislation. And any correspondence coming out of the LAFCO office would be consistent with the policy that the commission adopted, was it January?
Yes.
So the commission adopted a legislative policy that allows me to write letters on the commission's behalf. But the commission wanted these legislative policies as a guidance for me to write those letters.
But I think that what we're just asking is, or I think, is just to review those policies, right? And make sure that we're on the right track, and make sure if we want to amend or add or subtract or.
I'll go back again, that if this LAFCO commission is going to be having guiding documents, principles, policies, whatever that may be, that are going to impact our county, that this commission needs to have input on that. And I don't feel that we are having any input when we just take this and adopt it without having any conversation. So whether that means that we establish a legislative committee, a subcommittee of the commission, or have a study session to adopt those and have comments on, that would seem like it's better policy for us to make, rather than just to take it, and what works for the state may not work for us locally here. I mean, we've talked about flexibility of this commission, and I don't think that we're doing that.
That's why I want to make sure that we get, if there is any specific legislation that comes forward that Cal-LAFCO is involved in, that this commission be given an opportunity to review it prior to staff writing a letter.
But if we adopt these there.
Well, that's what I'm
just said, You
clarifying.
can write a letter.
Yeah, I think the commission should have an opportunity to review those bills that Cal-LAFCO is taking a position on, whether for or against.
Commissioner Vogel, opinion?
Oh, sure. I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, so, the commission's already adopted a policy that gives the executive officer the authority to write a letter to Cal-LAFCO. And oftentimes, the requests from Cal-LAFCO for a letter are immediate. We need this letter next week. There's not going to be a time to come before the commission to run it past the commission. That was the whole reason that we adopted, that we brought to the commission for adoption, that policy in the first place. Now, and I forget the specific wording of the policy, but before I send that, I do have to get the chair's approval and or the vice chair's approval. It's not just me sending it out. It is conferring with the chair before it's sent out and saying it's consistent with these policies. Back to Commissioner Rooney's point about having maybe 2 hearings on the adoption of these policies. These are policies, so if the commission adopts the policy that we discussed in a previous item about new policies would have to have 2 readings unless waived, this would be subject to that as well. So legislative policies in the future would be adopted with the first reading and a second reading, assuming that that second reading policy is adopted.
Well, I appreciate that you provided this for us. Gives us an opportunity to look at it. I think some commissioners want some more time to look at it, so why don't we just continue it, and if anyone has any problems with any of those items, they can bring it up after they've had a chance to look at it. And that sounds good to me, but this is the whole point. And this is what we do with all the other commissions and boards. You look at what the platform is. You decide if there's anything in that platform you don't like, in which you bring it up when it's on the agenda, and you have the opportunity to do that, and then you adopt it. And we still have the opportunity to look at all the bills that we're supporting. That's a separate item. These aren't the bills. These are the positions that we're looking at, the policies that we support, and they're all pretty, to me, obvious. So That's what you're proposing too, is when you have the bills that we're, that's part of what we're going to support, you bring that to us when there's adequate time to do that.
Right, absolutely. And when there is an update, a legislative update, as part of the agenda, and those specific items can be discussed if there is a concern with any of the legislation that's on that agenda item.
As I understand, that some commissioners aren't comfortable yet that they know what's in this, so.
Commissioner Ramirez, you had something?
I know that Commissioner,
Yeah, I was just deferring to Mr. Loma because he was mid-sentence when you called my name, but I wanted to just have some clarification. If Ventura County LAFCO's legislative platform ends up being different from the Cal LAFCO, how will that reconcile?
If it's a letter coming from your commission, then it would have to be consistent with the commission's legislative policies. They don't have to match Cal LAFCO's.
Okay.
The commission does not have to agree with the position on any legislation that Cal LAFCO takes.
So we can just then follow our own platform.
Correct.
All right.
We can oppose that for whatever
Thank you.
That's correct.
whatever they're proposing, we can also oppose, because it's not beneficial to us. So I think that's what Commissioner Rooney was wanting to clarify. Is that,
So do we schedule yes, Commissioner?
I just wanted to add, this is something the city of Oxnard does. I assume other cities do. To adopt a legislative program so that we don't have to bring every single thing back to
Exactly.
council. Of course, we're notified. I assume that's what the county does.
We do,
right?
yeah. We do.
Okay. And the other question I have is, are you, just as an aside, are you aware, Kai, of any legislation coming forward that would be germane here?
Yeah, typically there's always the omnibus bill. It's the Cal LAFCO omnibus bill, which is the whole point is to make a number of inconsequential corrections to CKH. Cal LAFCO routinely asks for letters of support for that. As far as any substantive bills, not yet. We're still kind of early on. There is a meeting of the legislative committee this Friday, so I can update the commission on anything in the next update memo, or I do plan to attach a legislative update on the next agenda.
So should we schedule a future agenda item formally reviewing the legislative policies from Cal LAFCO, and that would give us enough time to review and consider how it affects Ventura County in context?
Well, that's what this item is, and if you want to continue it to a subsequent hearing to allow further discussion, then that's certainly something the commission can do.
We do have a motion on the table, which we should vote on and then continue. So the motion was to approve the policies as is, and we will vote on that.
Just, are there objections to any of the items, or you just want to continue the whole thing?
I'd like to continue the whole discussion. I mean, because I just don't feel like we have had that discussion.
So we go through with,
We're not ready to have that discussion
Right.
tonight, right?
I don't feel so.
okay, so the motion is to approve the policies as is. All in favor of the motion, say aye. There was a second by Commissioner Parvin.
This is the motion to approve.
To approve as is. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Maybe we should do a roll call. Let's vote by roll call, please.
Yeah, and you can vote on the
Screen.
You
On
can
the
vote on
screen.
the screen if you want.
You can vote on the screen.
Ever done that before?
No. I was like, what?
Okay, has everyone cast their vote? I don't see anything. Oh, right. Do we have a tally on that?
Second.
Okay, so we have formally adopted the policies as presented. suppose there's nothing keeping us from having another conversation about it, and we can always amend
Yeah.
or modify those policies. Great.
Right, and we will bring them back next year as well for
Yes.
reconsideration.
Huh?
Mr. Chair.
That's right.
Commissioner Freeman?
So you said you have a meeting this Friday?
The Ledge Committee
Yeah.
has a meeting, yes.
So there's, I mean, the deadline for filing bills was in February, so there's a wealth of bills out there.
We have a 154-page agenda.
Yes. So at the next meeting, you'll be updating us on the positions that Cal LAFCo took.
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Rooney?
So in preparation for the next year's legislative platform, I'd recommend that this commission schedule a study session of what those legislative policies look at before we just blanket approve something. Thank you.
I agree. If we could add that to the calendar, just for us to consider. Yeah. Okay, moving on then to item 11, relocation of the LAFCO office. Do we have any? Part two. Do we have a staff report on that? Kai's making his way up to the microphone.
Okay, good morning, Commissioners. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And some of those commissioners referenced part two because the commission did look at relocating the office back in 2016 and determined that the current location was the optimum location. However, we don't have a choice this time. So this is agenda item number 11 regarding the relocation of the LAFCO office. So last month, in February, LAFCO staff was notified by the county executive office that the LAFCO office is to be relocated. The office relocation is to be completed by July 1st of this year. And they also determined that there is no suitable alternative space for LAFCO in the County Hall of Administration. So according to the memorandum of understanding between the county and LAFCO from 2001, the county agrees to provide LAFCO with suitable office space and such furniture and equipment as LAFCO requires. And LAFCO agrees to pay the county the usual rents and related charges paid for similar space, furniture, and equipment in county agencies and departments. So the county is obligated to assist the commission in finding suitable office space. And I just want to inform the commission that there's no bad blood between the county and LAFCO. They're not kicking us out of animosity or anything. We have a great relationship with the county.
You didn't pay the rent, that's
Yeah. It's just that the CEO's office needs all the space on the fourth floor to accommodate their expanding office. And they've been very helpful in helping us find office space. So currently the LAFCO office is located on the fourth floor of this building. It's approximately 975 square feet, but we also have use of an adjacent kitchen and break room, which effectively makes our office space a little bit bigger. It's comprised of one office. We have 2 cubicle workstations. There's a single room that serves as a conference room, a file room, an office supply room, and a printer room. So things kind of do get a little crowded in there at times. And then we have a reception area. If we were to stay in the office, the estimated cost for next fiscal year is just about $25,000 or $2.13 a square foot per month. So we've been working with the County Public Works Agency's real estate division in helping us locate office space. This is what they do, and they've been incredibly helpful. But we gave a list of parameters to county staff to say this is what we would consider suitable office space. And those parameters or considerations were the location. We wanted to be close to the government center. This is consistent with the commission's determinations back in 2016. The size, we need offices or workstations for 3 staff. We need a conference room. We need space for files, the printer, office supplies. We would need a kitchen area, and we would need a reception area. Tenant improvements, we were looking for space that would require limited tenant improvements. This was to reduce the upfront costs and also reduce the time needed to complete improvements. Substantial improvements would take months. They would have to get building permits, and it would go well past the July 1st deadline. and it's very expensive. The county agreed to cover the cost of some limited improvements, but any substantial improvements would have been borne by LAFCo. Security was very important. Being here in the, yes?
I'm sure you're going to probably cover this, but this is only offices. We're still going to meet here at the chamber, right?
Yes, this is just for LAFCO offices for us to conduct business. Everything else, we'll still be conducting the commission meetings here.
Okay.
So. Security, currently we benefit from all the security this building has to offer: security guards, panic buttons, restricted access to the public. We're not going to have that offsite. So security is important. There are times where, say, Rochelle's in the office by herself because Andrea and I are out in the field for hours at a time. So security was an important factor. And then the annual cost. We were looking for a reasonable lease rate. The office spaces that we look for, the lease rate ranged from $1.75 to $2.50 a square foot per month. So there is no available office space in a county-owned building near the government center. So we were forced to look at commercial office space, which we did. The county staff provided us with well over 20 spaces, and we kind of weeded out the ones that just weren't going to work for us, down to the ones that we thought we would look at that had a potential. We visited 7 office spaces located across Hill in the big office building complex. They were all at the high end of the lease range. They all had a large load factor, which effectively means that 17% of the lease cost covers shared hallways and shared restrooms. So the listed square footage is actually less when you include that load factor. All of them needed moderate to substantial tenant improvements. Some were too small, others were just too large, and only one had a secured reception waiting room. So we took all these off the table. They just weren't workable. So we visited 4 more west of the government center across Victoria. One was too small. It was under 900 square feet, and it also needed substantial improvements. One was too large. It was 1,800. We only visited that one because they told us it was 1,400. It wasn't. And that was the closest to being move-in ready, but it was just too expensive at that size. The third, again, too small, and needed substantial tenant improvements. And that left us with this 4th one, which actually turned out to meet all of our needs, fortunately. So the preferred office space, it's located in the building at 801 South Victoria. This is directly across the street from the government center. So, well, you can see on the aerial there. That's the government center on the right, and that's the building there. The size is adequate for LAFCO needs. There is, once you consider the load factor of 10%, there's 1,188 square feet of office space. It provides 2 offices and space for a 3rd workstation. There's a conference room. There's a separate reception and waiting room. And there's space for the files, supplies, printers in the kitchen area.
Is there a crosswalk there?
There's a crosswalk, yes. There's a crosswalk across Victoria, right, yeah, at the corner of Phil there. There's also an underpass underneath Victoria if you go up toward the freeway. So this is a site plan. Let me see if I can get the pointer to work. Okay, so there's an elevator over here. This is the walkway. You come into the entrance right here, and you come into a dedicated reception room. It probably was, I think, a doctor's office at one point, because there's an existing window in the wall here, and then this door enters into the remainder of the office space. So there's 2 offices, one here, and then we've asked that this wall be removed to open up this space. Rochelle's workstation would be right here, where she has visibility into the reception room. All of our files and such along here, and then offices for Andrea and me. And then this area would be for conference room. So the tenant, or the property owner, it was a long-term tenant that occupied this space, so it hasn't been updated in years. So the property owner has agreed to do a number of improvements at no cost to LAFCo. So they've agreed to provide new paint, carpet, lighting, ceiling tiles, new doors, and new window blinds throughout. And they've also agreed to remove that wall that I just talked about, and then also the little storage closet here, all at no cost to LAFCo. Regarding security, this reception room is not secured yet, but again, the property owner has agreed to widen this opening, this window, about 18 inches, and then install impact-resistant glass there, so it can't be punched through or broken through. There'd be some means to talk through it, and then a tray to slide documents and such under it. They also agreed to provide in this door here, to make it a door with a window in it, also impact-resistant security glass. And that way, anyone coming into the reception area can be seen throughout the office to see who it is. Now, that door will be lockable, so there's no way for anyone coming into the reception room to get into the office proper without a staff member allowing them to. So I ran this idea past the head of GSA security, and they said it was a really good method for security.
Kai, I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you. The window that's impact resistant will have a speaker in it? Or?
It'll have some means to talk through, yes, either little holes in it, or there's other methods to do that to keep it secure, yes. So. And again, those improvements are at no cost to LAFCo. And then another benefit about this building is there are nighttime security patrols. One comes around in the early evening, checks to make sure all the doors are locked, et cetera, and then they have, they come through, I think, 3 more times throughout the night.
Commissioner Bill Lupin, you have a question?
Yes, I just have a question. Where would the kitchen area be and where are the bathrooms?
Oh, the kitchen, let's see. This storage cabinet is actually wired, and it would be perfect in an area for a water cooler, a little refrigerator, and a microwave. So that's the idea. If not there's plenty of space around in this area where the file cabinet and printers will be. There's plenty of space here also for that if we need it. We haven't completely figured out the specifics, but there's plenty of space for both. For kitchen and the file cabinets, et cetera. The bathrooms are down the hall over in this way by the elevator.
Are they keyed?
Are the bathrooms keyed? I don't remember.
Probably.
They're not, okay. Yeah, they'll lock them after hours.
Commissioner Curtis, you have a question?
Yes. Is there wiring in the reception room for a TV camera?
Yes, and that was actually another suggestion by the GSA security, that they said we might want to entertain doing that in the future and have, it's wireless and can tap into the internet so we can see it on our monitors or on our cell phones.
Correct.
So we do have that in mind in the future.
Commissioner Parvin.
Question regarding the reception area again. Would the person whoever that person is going to be sitting at the front, would they have a button they push that would unlock it, or do they have to get up each time there's a visitor and unlock the door?
Well, we talked about that. My idea was to have a buzzer, and then Rochelle pointed out that we get a visitor maybe once every 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
So
then that's not an issue.
It's not a huge inconvenience to do that. And what we're thinking is, that door, the interior door going from the reception room to the office might just have a combo lock on it, something like that, so staff can come and go as we please without having to carry keys, but no one else can get in. So. Okay, annual cost. So the list price of this space was $1.85 per square month, or just over $29,000 annually. However, the county was negotiating with the property owner in the interest of LAFCo. The county is actually going to take out the lease with the property owner. And the county was able to negotiate, and both the county and the property owner have signed a letter of intent that for the first 2 years, the rent would be $1.75 a square foot. And after that, it would increase by a factor of 2% each year for the remaining 8 years. So there would be a 10-year lease here. This little table shows what it would cost. So for the first year, it would be $27,720 for the first 2 years. At the end of 10 years, it would be $32,472. This averages out to $1.88 a square foot over 10 years, or $29,779 over a year over 10 years. And this price also includes all utilities and janitorial service.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I have a question. I mean, LAFCO is an independent agency from the county, so why would the county enter into the lease agreement with the property owner rather than LAFCO doing that?
It goes back to the memorandum of agreement that the agreement between LAFCO and the county, that the county says it will be responsible for providing us with office space. And the county has a great credit rating. I don't think LAFCO even has a credit
I was
rating
going
at
to share
this
that.
point. Yeah,
That's a plus, right?
yeah. So
Does the county then charge us a surcharge to, or is the direct pass-through?
it'll be just a direct pass-through.
So, okay, no administrative costs by the county to do
No.
this?
No. The county is very supportive of LAFCO and very supportive of the mission of LAFCO, and they are doing everything they can to abide by their obligations under the MOA, and also to help cover the cost, which I'll get into, of this move.
So what's the termination date of the MOA?
The MOA is ongoing. It renews every year unless the county or the commission wants to terminate it.
But the move, you want by July 1, right?
Yeah, the move by July 1. And so I'll talk a little bit about
Is there flexibility in the agreement in case the LAFCO wanted to move, or are
I'll
you
talk-
locked in?
Yeah, I'll talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. So here are the upfront costs. Before it was the annual cost. The upfront costs, I mean, if you remember back in 2016, the upfront costs were going to be $30,000 to $40,000. Here, because of the county's generosity and also as an incentive to move the office spaces as soon as possible, the county has agreed to pick up a lot of the cost associated with the move. So the county has, well, first of all, the tenant improvements, as I said, they're going to be covered by the property owner at no cost to LAFCO. The county has agreed to provide new office furniture for the 2 offices and the workstation, completely new furniture. This is a cost of up to $15,000. The county has also agreed to cover all of the moving expenses associated with the move. And the county has agreed to cover all the costs to set up the office space so we can access the county computer and telephone networks. So they would rewire the entire space. There needs to be a dish installed on the roof, that kind of thing. All of that will be at no cost to LAFCO. The only costs that we would anticipate are like notification of the office move to all of the interested parties. This would be a mass mailing, mass email, et cetera.
And Mr. Chair, that's an incentive to expedite the move.
Exactly, yes. They basically said, if you move forward on this quickly, we will do all of this for you. So
I think the county needs a space.
the county wants the space. Yes, yes. Yeah, so their generosity is, I mean, there's, yeah, so, okay. Okay, so the county has agreed to lease the office space for a period of 10 years. And the lease would have to be approved by the Board of Supervisors. Now, the county has also agreed to enter into a sublease with LAFCO for that space. And they've agreed to the following terms: that LAFCO would remain in the space for the first 5 years. This gives us a sense of security that they won't come in and ask us to move again, in the near future. So we'd have that 5 years. But conversely, LAFCO would not ask to move in 5 years. So we would be there for 5 years minimum. After that 5 years, the sublease would renew automatically annually unless either party wants to terminate the lease at that time. So the commission has flexibility after 5 years to move out if there's a reason to do so. At the end of 10 years, if the commission determines to stay in the office space, LAFCO and the county can then negotiate a subsequent agreement. And then the sublease would have to be approved by the commission. And that's actually what you'd be doing today. So our recommendation is that the commission authorize the executive officer to execute the sublease consistent with the terms discussed in the staff report. Now, this is because before the CEO's office is comfortable taking the lease request to the Board of Supervisors, they would like the commission to take an action that the commission is okay with this arrangement. So your approval today would serve as approval of this whole arrangement, and then they would go to the board for the lease. And that would be in early April. It's scheduled for April 9th at this point. Once how I'm told how this works is once the lease is signed, then the property owner will start doing the improvements. County GSA will be involved to rewire as that's all going on. So it'll probably take about 6 weeks to complete. So we would anticipate a move late May or early June.
Mr. Chair, I can't find the sublease agreement in our agenda.
Yeah,
Could
there
you
is,
help me?
there's no sublease agreement. It would be, the sublease would be written with input by legal counsel, and it would include all of the terms that were laid out in the staff report. And then I would sign it after it's been reviewed by both me and Mr. Walker for consistency with the terms that would be approved by the commission here.
So here's my concern, is that we have no agreement to review, but we're asking to approve. And I just want to make sure that in the staff report, does it talk about that there will be no administrative costs on behalf of the county to LAFCo during the entire term of the agreement? So that's why I wasn't able to find it here in the staff report. So
We can request that. That can certainly be part of the commission's approval, that be included in the sublease.
yeah.
And that's never been, the county has been working, I mean, just, they are not, they are doing what they can to help the commission. They are not going to tack on some lease or
It's
cost.
just difficult to vote on something that we're not reading, which I've heard other members talk about this on previous agenda items, that, we're asking to be approving something that we don't have in front of
Right.
us. So.
In this case, this was actually not how the county typically handles these situations. They would have the lease and then wait for the sublease to be written up, and it takes months because we don't have months. The county arranged it so that we could go by this process. They are accommodating the commission by doing it this way. They are.
And the county will protect LAFCO and the county too, we're.
Absolutely. And the county counsel's office, part of the recommendation number 2 is a waiver of potential conflict of interest that will allow Mr. Walker to represent LAFCO, and the county counsel's office would represent the county in the lease. So nothing is going to get into that sublease that we haven't agreed to.
Commissioner Richards.
Yeah, just a mundane question, but parking, is there dedicated parking for staff? I know parking in that area gets a little crowded.
It's not dedicated, but apparently the building has parking, 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet of office space. So we would have plenty of parking for 3 staff and then the occasional visitor.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Curtis, you have something?
Being kind of familiar with that building, I was interested in the parking also, and the thing I'm interested in is, will there be a place, have you made agreement, is there a place to put the LAFCO name? Because it's a little bit hard to find that in the back, if it's in the back of the building there, it's a little hard to find it. And you're going to have some type of, especially in a new area. The second question is, I don't know, is there a walkway, a pedestrian walkway across Victoria at that corner?
Right. Regarding signage, yes, the LAFCO signage, we would be added to the directory of office spaces, directing the public to where we are. As far as wall signage, I'm not sure about the signage that's visible from Victoria. I don't know if that's part of it, but we will have signage in the directory, and then we'll have signage on the door. Regarding I can go back here. So yes, there's a crosswalk right here across Victoria. So it'd be just
Signal light there too.
yeah, and a signal. There's also an underpass. If you go up here and up to the top, right about here, there's actually a pedestrian underpass under Victoria in that area too.
No, I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
So unless there's no other questions, that's staff's recommendation, and that's the presentation.
Mr. Chair, are we going to have a ribbon cutting ceremony?
Office warming. Commissioner Freeman?
Will the final agreement come back to the commission?
It will not. After it's signed, I can put it on the agenda just so you can review it.
Information purposes?
For information purposes, yes. The execution of it, if approved, the commission will give me the authority to execute it. That's going to get the ball rolling. That's going to get the tenant, to go with the improvements.
Do you know when it goes to the board? Because it has to go to the board, right?
Right, April 9th.
That's our next meeting. Yeah.
I think if
The board will see the full agreement?
I'm sorry?
The Board of Supervisors will see the full agreement?
They'll see the full lease agreement because what the Board of Supervisors, they're going to be approving the lease with the tenant, or the property owner. And then at that time, John Wheel with the County Real Estate Division is here. Because I don't know exactly know how that's going to be a county process. He might be able to speak to that. Thanks, John.
Hello, Commission. My name's John Wheel. I work for the County of Ventura as a real property agent for a Public Works Agency. And I do have a cold. Pardon me, the item is on the agenda for April 9th, Tuesday, April 9th. And they have a sublease drafted that'll be reviewed by Michael Walker. And then Robert Oriana will review the actual lease agreement between the county and the landlord. And the lease mirrors, the sublease mirrors the lease. All the terms are the same, the rent's the same. There's no cost being added by the county to charge to LAFCo.
Okay. Any questions on that? Okay.
Mary Ann, you did ask a question that we add into our agreement relative to administrative costs, I think.
Right, that no administrative fees will be added to the
So
lease.
are you confirming that there aren't going to be any administrative costs associated with it?
No, none.
You're not confirming, or you are confirming?
No, there's no cost. The lease is a full-service lease. The rent includes the tenant improvements. The rent includes utilities. And
Janitorial.
so it's full service, like that janitorial too. And the county's going to pay the rent directly to the landlord. And then LAFCO will reimburse the county for that exact rental amount.
Okay, just want clarification on that.
Mr.
But
Chair,
specifically, the county is precluded from coming back with any additional administrative costs.
Yeah, that would have to be attached to the sublease, and Mr. Walker will review that. And there's no such clause in the lease to charge administrative costs to LAFCO by the county.
Commissioner Rooney?
I'd like to recommend that we break these two items separately and vote on each item separately, rather than lumping them together.
Excuse me, I'd like to understand which.
There's 11.1 and 2.
1 and 2, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
One's authorize the executive director and the other one is to.
Right, I'm just curious what your concern is.
They're two separate items that are, and I'm going to vote differently on them.
Okay, I just wanted to know your thinking.
Yep.
Any further questions or thoughts?
Go ahead and move the first item to allow for the sublease. Thank you.
Okay, we have a first and a second on item 11.1. Any further discussion before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Commissioner Ramirez.
I'm abstaining on number 1.
Okay.
And then I'll go ahead and move item 2.
And I'll second that as well.
All right, a first and a second on 11.2. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor?
Yeah, I abstained on
She abstained
number
on-
1.
There was one abstention.
Rochelle,
Rochelle.
I abstained on number 1.
All right, we'll make that correction.
And just to clarify, the abstention is that I feel uncomfortable with approving something that we haven't even seen and our council hasn't even referred to.
Okay, we have a motion on the table for 11, item 2.
Same people.
Parks and seconded by Commissioner Ramirez. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. All right, well, I really do wish that LAFCO could be in this building. This seems to be like the next best thing, being across the street. I do wonder, long-term, 10 years from now, we're looking at this again. is anyone familiar with the county's plans to expand this building to bring in more office space? I know we're only getting bigger, so that's something I'd be curious what that
We've been
long-term plan.
buying buildings,
Oh, okay,
but this building itself, I don't think that will happen.
okay.
We're not planning on that, but
So we'll just expand the
we have
grounds.
purchased some buildings in the neighboring area.
In
Gotcha.
fact, all over the county, all over the different cities, we're expanding.
Really?
Yeah, I know in Oxnard, go down Gonzales, and half of Gonzales now belongs to the county. In South Oxnard, and I'm sure in other parts of the county that we're expanding and buying buildings and so forth.
I happened to work in this building when we moved into this building, and everybody thought we'd never grow out of it. So,
Wow.
I think Mr. Chair, the important thing is we have the availability of this chamber because we have all the amenities that can help us out with our agendas and so forth.
Yeah, we'll still be spending plenty of time over here, I mean, dealing with all of the different agencies that support LAFCO, so.
Can I share something too? I think, the county coming out with this lease, it's important the county is going to protect the county, is going to protect LAFCO. And I think that the county will not do anything to jeopardize LAFCO or the county for that matter. And we have our real estate person here and county council, and we're all going to be protected. So I just want to share that.
Right, and the county is the LAFCO's biggest funder,
Exactly.
just as far as our operations, so.
All right, well, a lot of work to do until June. Good luck with that. Let me know if you need some extra muscle to move some stuff around. I do have a truck. Okay, moving on, correspondence received. Any comments on that, Kai?
No.
All right, item 12, Executive Officer's Report on future agenda items.
Right, yeah, nothing to add other than what's on the staff report, consistent with commission direction. We're doing that now as part of every agenda, just trying to identify what to expect on future agenda items, or agendas, sorry.
Commissioner Curtis.
I just would like to say that, I don't know if all of you remember this, but this building was turned down 3 times by the taxpayers of Ventura County. Before the Board of Supervisors said enough is enough, and they went out and did it themselves. And aren't we lucky to have had those people that were willing on that board to do that thing?
That's some fascinating
I understand there was a lemon orchard here before, right?
yeah,
Lemon
I
orchard?
was going to say there wasn't anything out here.
That's right. I was reading some of that history behind it, but.
That's amazing. All right, Commissioner comments. One thing, just anecdotally, the Board of Supervisors just approved the wildlife corridor for the county, and I had a question to Kai, just in context of this commission, is there anything for the edification of the board that, what does that look like for us? How would we consider that as a part of the LAFCO process with applicants that come forward in the future?
Yeah, and it was a great question. I hadn't gotten to the point of thinking about it too much until Commissioner Ross asked. The wildlife corridor policies were added to the general plan for the county. And any project, any proposal for a development that's in county jurisdiction is, of course, subject to the county's general plan. Now, LAFCO law, there's a section in LAFCO law that identifies all of the considerations that the commission must consider before making a determination on a proposal. And one of them is consistency with the applicable general plan. So the consistency and that's the entirety of the general plan, and that would include the wildlife corridors. There's also a policy that the commission has adopted for proposals that said the commission will not approve a proposal unless there's exceptional circumstances. That is inconsistent with the applicable general plan, and oftentimes it'll be the county general plan. So that would include wildlife corridors. Now, in most cases, before an item comes to the commission, the county will have performed that review. The county will have prepared the environmental document. The county will have determined whether a proposal is consistent with its general plan. and that would include the wildlife corridors. But the commission still would have to consider and make its own determination on that consistency. So,
Great. Thank you for that. Any further comments from the commissioners before we adjourn? Okay, we have a motion to adjourn and a second from Commissioner Parvin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All opposed, hearing none. Thank you, Commissioner Parks. Motion adjourned, or meeting adjourned, sorry.